National Prejudices by Oliver Goldsmith. As I am one of the sauntering tribe of mortals who spend the greatest part of their time in taverns, coffee houses, and other places of public resort, I have thereby an opportunity of observing an infinite variety of characters, which to a person of a contemplative turn is a much higher entertainment than a view of all the curiosity of art or nature. In one of these my late rambles, I accidentally fell into the company of half a dozen gentlemen who were engaged in a warm dispute about some political affair, the decision of which they were equally divided in their sentiments. They thought proper to refer to me, which naturally drew me in for a share of the conversation. Amongst a multiplicity of other topics, we took occasion to talk of the different characters of the several nations of Europe, when one of the gentlemen, cocking his hat, assuming such an air of importance as if he had possessed all the merit of the English nation in his own person, declared that Dutch were a parcel of greedy wretches, the French a set of flattering sycophants, that the Germans were drunken sots and beastly gluttons, and Spaniards proud, haughty, and rude tyrants, but that in bravery, generosity, mercy, and in every other virtue the English excelled the rest of the world. This very learned and judicious remark was received with a general smile of approval by all the company, all I mean but your humble servant, who, endeavouring to keep my gravity as well as I could, and reclining my head upon my arm, continued for some time in a posture of affected thoughtfulness, as if I had been musing on something else, and did not seem to attend to the subject of conversation, hoping by these means to avoid the disagreeable necessity of explaining myself. But my pseudo-patriot had no mind to let me escape so easily. Not satisfied that his opinion should pass without contradiction, he was determined to have it approved by the vote of everyone in the company, for which purpose, addressing himself to me with an air of inexpressible confidence, he asked me if I was not of the same way of thinking. I am never forward in giving my opinion, especially when I have reason to believe that it will not be agreeable. So when I am obliged to give it, I always hold it for a principle to speak my real sentiments. I therefore told him that for my own part I should not have ventured to talk in such a peremptory strain unless I had made the tour of Europe and examined the manners of these several nations with great care and accuracy, and that perhaps a more impartial judge would not hesitate to affirm that Dutch were more frugal and industrious, the French more temperate and polite, the Germans more hardy and patient of labour and fatigue, and the Spaniards more sober and composed than the English, who, though undoubtedly brave and generous, were at the same time rash, headstrong, and impetuous, too apt to be elated with prosperity, and too despond in adversity. I could easily perceive that all the company began to regard me with a jealous eye. Before I had finished my answer, which I had no longer done, than the patriotic gentleman observed with a contemptuous sneer that he was greatly surprised how some people could have the conscience to live in a country which they did not love, and to enjoy the protection of a government to which in their hearts they were inveterate enemies. Finding that by this modest declaration of my sentiments, I had forfeited the good opinion of my companions, and given them an occasion to call my political principles in question, well knowing that it was in vain to argue with men who were so full of themselves. I threw down my reckoning and retired to my own lodgings, reflecting on the absurd and ridiculous nature of national prejudices and prepossession. Among all the famous sayings of antiquity, there is none that does greater honor to the author or affords greater pleasure to the reader, at least if he be a person of a generous and benevolent heart, than that of the philosopher who, being asked what countryman he was, replied that he was a citizen of the world. How few are there to be found in modern times who can say the same, or whose conduct is consistent with such a profession? We have now become so much Englishmen, Frenchmen, Dutchmen, Spaniards, or Germans that we are no longer citizens of the world, so much the natives of one particular spot, or members of one petty society, that we no longer consider ourselves as the general inhabitants of the globe, or members of that grand society which comprehends the whole humankind. Did these prejudices prevail only among the meanest and lowest of the people? Perhaps they might be excused, as they have few, if any, opportunities of correcting them by reading, travelling, or conversing with foreigners. But the misfortune is that they infect the minds and influence the conduct even of our gentlemen, of those, I mean, who have every title to this appellation but an exemption from prejudice, which, however, in my opinion, ought to be regarded as typical mark of a gentleman. For let a man's birth be ever so high, his station ever so exalted, or his fortune ever so large, if he is not free from national and other prejudices, I should make bold to tell him that he had a low and vulgar mind, and had no just claim to the character of a gentleman. And in fact, you will always find that those are most apt to boast up national merit who have little or no merit of their own to depend on, than which, to be sure, nothing is more natural. The slender vine twists around the sturdy oak, for no other reason in the world but because it has not strength sufficient to support itself. Should it be alleged in defense of national prejudice that it is the natural and necessary growth of love to our country, and that therefore the former cannot be destroyed without hurting the later, I answer that this is a serious misconception and false belief. That it is the growth of love to our country, I will allow, but that it is the natural and necessary growth of it, I absolutely deny. Superstitions and enthusiasm too are the growth of religion, but who ever took it in his head to affirm that they are the necessary growth of this noble principle? They are, if you will, the bastard sprouts of this heavy plant, but not its natural and genuine branches, and may safely enough be lopped off without doing any harm to the parent system. Nay, perhaps still once they are lopped off, this goodly tree can never flourish in perfect health and vigor. Is it not very possible that I may love my country without hating the natives of other countries? That I may exert the mock heroic bravery, the most undaunting resolution in defending its laws and liberty, without despising all the rest of the world as cowards and poltroons? Most certainly it is, if it were not. But why Need I suppose that it is absolutely impossible, but if it were not, I must own I should prefer the title of the ancient philosopher, viz., a citizen of the world, to that of an Englishman, a Frenchman, a European, or to any other appellation whatever.